Welcome to a new update, and in this update on this beautiful Sunday we're going to make a video about altcoins, because Bitcoin has been making a new yearly high, but altcoins are making bigger gains. If you are in some that are doing really well, congratulations, you are in the first group of people that are making profits with their altcoins, but the other altcoins are going to follow suit. So the question is, which ones are going to do the best? And how can you position yourself the best in these markets? And that's a topic that we're going to discuss in this update, where we're going to focus on the overall landscape of altcoins, and we're going to look at a few specific ones which have been trending and which are still trending, and we're going to look at a few altcoins which are not trending but are ready to follow suit. Before we continue, this update is provided to you by Bitfavo, which we'll be discussing in a little bit. But if you want to get more content, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit the like button, and also check me out on Instagram and X, where I'm posting more updates. And also I'm providing updates on the socials altcoin portfolio, which I'll be discussing next week on our Discord. And I'll be providing some new updates on that really soon too, as we are grinding back up with the portfolios. And my personal portfolio is up approximately 25 to 30% right now if you're becoming a premium member. But more importantly, new members or new participants are getting into the markets, which means we've got 3 more days of discount on our crypto one-on-one course, which is more than 7 hours of content on all aspects of the market. So if you want to get yourself a kickstart, this is the course where you can get everything about Bitcoin, the background of Bitcoin, Ether, the entire ecosystem, and why that is all important. I explain to you security and the wallets. I explain to you how you should start a portfolio, an introduction in TA, an introduction in FA, and the mindset and social media. It's more than 7 hours of content. You can find a video here as well. We've been shooting it in a professional studio, and I think it's the broadest course you can find. It's the first one, because in January we're going to launch a second one solely dedicated for trading, but you need this one to get yourself started. Then if you think about my portfolios, I've got a trading portfolio and I've got an investment portfolio, which I put aside with my wallets, with my hard wallets. And I've got swing trading altcoin portfolios and investment altcoin portfolios, which I do through a different exchange than the one that I'm using for my day trading, because I don't want to have all the portfolios on one exchange to mingle them together. And I want to have the case that I'm not solely risking it all on one exchange. We've had FTX, probably will be having more exchanges falling apart in the future. Therefore, I use one exchange for my investments into altcoins, which is the easiest exchange out there. It's Bitfavo, where I DCA my altcoins, where I also sell my altcoins, where I transfer my crypto towards fiat and back and forth. And I can give you 10,000 euros of free trading, and also I can give you a deposit bonus of 10 euros for free if you sign up with Bitfavo, which is, I think, in the Netherlands the biggest exchange where you can trade your altcoins. They have more than 200, but also outside of the Netherlands, in Europe, they can onboard you all. And if you want to get started, I think this is the one where you want to get started. When we think about the markets, and we start off with Bitcoin first in this update. When we start with Bitcoin, we have to consider the fact that we are currently trending up massively. So if we start to zoom out, I'll just do that in the all-time history index. If we start to zoom out on the weekly time frame, you can see that Bitcoin has a very specific way of trending during the year. So this is the stage where Bitcoin is not really accelerating that much, but it is showing some momentum, and there is still an overall concern of a bull or a bear market. And I think that's currently where we are acting in, which means that there is still an overall debate whether or not the Bitcoin price action is a bullish breakout and we start a new bull cycle, or whether it is a bearish retest and we're going to fall beneath. And for both of the entire strategies or the entire arguments, we can find variables that we actually think of as an important indicator. But in this aspect, I think that if you look at the markets overall, you need to use common sense, first of all, and you need to use the arguments you can see based on data points. Because sentiment comes with the news or comes with price mainly. So whether or not the arguments of the previous cycle should be combined with the arguments of this cycle, we will find new arguments of which and why the markets are going to move. But it's already reflected in the data. So what we see with Bitcoin right now, and I'll get to it in a little bit and we go through all the levels. With Bitcoin we see a bullish breakout. That doesn't mean that we are finishing off the run at this point. It also doesn't mean that we're going to find ourselves on lower levels. It means that we're trending to the upside. So you can start defining yourself a strategy that is suitable for yourself and that is easy to handle. Because I think when trading becomes complex or anything in life becomes complex for you, you should make it simple, because then you're easier to reflect and you're easier to grow as a person based on that experience. So in that regard, if we look at the current price action of Bitcoin, it is similar than the previous cycle. So from the historical aspect, we know that there is a pre-halving run. And in this case, we've got some more strength fueled by the ETF case, the spot Bitcoin ETF, which I think is very vital for the markets. And I've been discussing this in the previous update. But what we're looking at here is a case of an uptrending market. So for me to look at arguments that are important to see is that the higher the time frame, the more significant the levels are, and the more significant the indicators are if you see a certain trend. So if we look at the previous 2022 cycle, we saw a massive bearish divergence in two cases. First of all, we saw one here during the first run where the upside was relatively exhausted, and then we had a correction to the 30k level. Second, we had another one also on lower time frames where we reached 69k and we started to follow a downward trend without any bearish retest, but you can see that the market started to make a lower low in this case and a lower high, which means that the trend started to switch and the trend started to continue falling down, in which Bitcoin reached 16k with the narratives that we had during that period, which was that the US is going to crack down crypto, etc., etc. That entire sentiment is currently changing towards a more positive sentiment, in which we can see that instead of cracking it down, they are regulating it, which means that it is opening the doors towards institutional investors. So the US is picking up pace with Asia at this point. Now, what can we see since this entire correction of 80% is that since then we have been making higher highs, higher lows. So we've had a new high here at 25k, we had a new higher low here at 19.6, we reached 30k after that in a pretty significant way. We retested the previous high at 24.7, another test at 31.4 and just barely making a new higher high. Since then we've had another downwards move, but we made a new higher low, and now we start to break to the upside. And those breaks to the upside usually come with multiple weeks of upside to be made. The question here at this point is, how far will this go? Probably we'll be seeing the RSI for the first time in a long time getting above 70, which we've also been anticipating in 2019, which we also have been anticipating in this run here for the first time in the entire bear cycle in the pre-halving run, which, as you can see, took like 4 to 5 weeks. The upside becomes a little bit more capped, and then probably the sentiment starts to become ultra bullish. So at this case, if you look at it from a price action perspective, we are making a new higher high and higher lows from a price action perspective. Additionally, we can also say that the longer we stay above 30k, the more likely we are going to hold above it, the stronger the markets are, which is because we are above this crucial area, the more likely we're going to continue to the upside, and the more likely we are continuing this with this trend overall. So yes, of course, if you are getting a correction towards 31k, that is the area where you want to look at. But at this point we are doing really fine, and we're going to have some more upside. But as we can see in the previous aspect, we see a move of 3 to 4 weeks, and moved to 3 to 4 weeks to actually the same here, but then kept. And now we are having like 2 weeks to the upside again. So probably we're going to have more upside, but the upside is limited because the most percentage of this run is already in. Volatility starts to drain down, most likely. And then we reach the resistance, so we start to consolidate and altcoins start to follow suit. Also, hype starts to go away at this point or at some point. So we've ran from like 27k to 35. We can still continue towards 40 to 45k, but not in one go. So probably we'll be consolidating a little bit. Now, when we're looking at the lower time frames for Bitcoin, we can conclude that we have a few pivotal areas, which is, in this case, if the markets bring you a correction of 20%, that is when you want to get in. So if the markets are correcting 20% now and drop towards 28k again, I wouldn't really get into it. Personally, I would expect Bitcoin to continue going to the upside like we've seen here. Hit resistance at 38k, have a pretty harsh correction, and then we start to continue going to the upside again. Whether or not we're going to have the retest now or after we hit the high or never, and then we just get a front run at 32k. If we get upside to 38 and then correct by 20%, you get more confirmation of the markets being strong than when we're getting a correction right now. So buying Bitcoin at this point is only making sense if you have a long-term investment strategy and just do it through DCA, or if you want to scalp on the lower time frame ranges. If you want to swing trade, you're looking for those heavy corrections at this point. So I think we are just in between at this stage. Oh, this is the wrong one, I'm sorry. We are just in between at this stage, which means that if you look at the lower time frames, we are establishing ourselves a range. The question will be, if Bitcoin gets towards 32.8, what are we going to hold? I think we will. And then we probably start targeting the high. And then the question becomes, how far will this reach? If we go in towards 38k and one go reject and start getting some bearish divergences, I think the most of the upside is in, which means that you have to look at something like ETH. And ETH against Bitcoin is currently in the process of itself finding a bottom, which means that if Bitcoin is going to top out in the near period, that is going to be the trigger for Ether to follow suit. First money moves in Bitcoin, then Ether, and then the rest of the altcoins. The rest of the altcoins, some of them are already breaking out at this point, so the strength is already moving and the correlation is a little bit less than what we've experienced in the previous cycles. Now, when we're looking at Ether against Bitcoin, you can see that it's currently getting into an RSI we've not seen until the previous bottom in 2019. For you, that should be an argument to say, hey, I'm not sure where I'm going to find the bottom, but if I want to invest or if I want to swing trade and I've been positioned into Bitcoin, I think that the upside for Bitcoin might be capped in the near future. So if Bitcoin breaks to the upside and gets towards 38k, I want to move something to Ether because I think that there's a higher ROI to be made in that particular asset. So Ether against Bitcoin is currently selling off because the focus is on Bitcoin. And it will start to change when Bitcoin tops out and starts to become stable. That is the trigger for altcoins to start moving. We are not sure whether it's going to be now or whether it's going to be from January, when it's usually a great period for altcoins, but it will happen. So these cycles will continue to do it, and we are going to see multiple like alt seasons or whatever we call, and we are currently into one because some altcoins are just doing a very strong move at this stage. So the trigger for you should be, hey, Ether against Bitcoin is getting into the areas where I want to become interested. So that's the area where I want to position myself into longs. All right. So if you look at the Bitcoin dominance, you will start to see the exact same as the previous cycle. The only difference is the previous cycle we made a lower high. And then we started to trend basically downwards until the peak high of Bitcoin. In this case, we are making a new higher high because Bitcoin is having so much focus at this point surrounding the spot Bitcoin ETF. So through the spot Bitcoin ETF, we can see that we are having more momentum and more strength there. But nonetheless, we can still expect altcoins to start outperforming Bitcoin at a later point. I'm also expecting the Bitcoin dominance to be peaking out in the next, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks, which I'll be updating with you accordingly. The total market cap, I've been discussing this chart previously. Trend downwards, trend upwards. I've been mentioning it, red blocks are downwards trend. Over enthusiastic market here, massive gains people have been making, but markets are moving both ways. So your key is to make money through upwards and downwards trending markets. And if you are interested into asset management, portfolio management, and consultancies on trading or anything else, check out the description beneath, because in the next week we're going to be live with our consultancies. We're going to be live with our portfolio management through consultancies, and we're going to launch asset management, which is an active trading strategy. The target portfolios that we have are several categories, and between 18 to 40% return we've made since September 1st. The active trading strategy, which we still need to activate through our third parties, have made 85%, or actually between 60 to 90% on returns. If you are interested, of course, there is a cap on the actual money that you can allocate. So if you're having a certain portfolio, make sure to send us an email. If you don't have it, also send us an email, because we are here to assist you in these markets. Because to be fair, the crypto markets are going to move in a big way in the coming few years, but the world is going to be an entire disaster. So crypto might become political and might be getting a bigger place on this earth. But on the other hand, we will see that earth is going to be, well, let's say in war, or the digital war, or anything else. So for you, it is not about making money, but it is about keeping yourself safe, keeping yourself in purchasing power that you need over time. So that's just what I wanted to share. The total market cap is currently looking at strength, which is comparable to Bitcoin. The only difference we see, Bitcoin is here already. The total market cap still needs to gain way more. It still needs to do a 2x to actually get into the all-time high regions. But as we can see, previous cycle, actually, if you look at the previous cycle of 2014, I think it was approximately 20 billion. We went to 740 billion, and the previous run we did a 4x. So I think from here we probably are going to see another 4 to 5x, maybe 6x on the next peak bull run, which means that anything that is into the markets is going to do a 10x if it is still surviving. So altcoins will do those massive gains, but they will do it from the period we have experienced right now. And I've been saying to you, buy those altcoins, because right now is the actual period, and I hope you have been doing it. Total market cap upwards trending, lagging behind, and there's a chart which is called Total 2, which is currently showing an even weaker approach. So what is happening in the markets right now? Bitcoin is moving first, then Ethereum has to follow suit, and then the rest will follow suit too. So at this point, the altcoin market cap needs to follow through, but it's doing it because, or after, Bitcoin is showing strength, because the market needs confidence, and it is getting it through Bitcoin. So this will probably start to pace in Q1 2024, or at least starting to show more strength, and then we probably are going to reach the numbers here. But the fact is that altcoins are still underperforming heavily. Let's discuss a few altcoins which are currently doing well. First of all, Chainlink, which is kind of the one that I've been watching a lot previously. The fact is also that in 2020 we reached the all-time high on the Bitcoin pair. So during this period in 2020 where it reached $20, we started to expand massively already. After that, we've made the USDT all-time high, but the Bitcoin pair made an earlier all-time high. So if you had a strategy of allocating towards Chainlink, then swapping in 2020 at the peak of Chainlink against Bitcoin to Bitcoin, you would have been better off by holding Bitcoin through 2021 than Chainlink against USDT. So that's also a key in your strategy. But I'm a very big fan of cycles, which means that I think that if the markets are starting to pace up, and we've seen the previous cycle with DeFi starting to pace up as one of the first categories, and I think AI is going to follow suit too, then probably there's a very likely chance that in this cycle we will be experiencing the same where DeFi starts to pick up as well. In that regard, what we see here is that Chainlink is breaking its 1.5 year range. So what we see on terms of price action with Chainlink is identical. We've been seeing a sideways action, we have been losing the low, we have been reclaiming it, so this one was a big trigger. We are retesting the middle of this entire range where it has been holding, and now we start to break through the upside as we have been reaching $12, and we are facing the first big resistance at $12.60. And the higher numbers are even around like $16. So I think that this first big push is probably going to be comparable to this, where we reach $12.50, start to consolidate for a little while, and then we start to break up to like 24, 25-ish. The odds of having a retest at the lows again are there, of course. But in order to have such a retest, I think we need to fall back into the range beneath $8 and have a bearish rejection, and then we're going to see it. But at this point, if you're into Chainlink, I think after such a massive move, taking partial TPs is necessary, which enables the, well, let's say easier way for you to just buy the dip on the assets, right? Nothing goes in a straight line. So if we go up, there will be some harsh corrections, and those are the spots where you want to get into. Now, with Chainlink against Bitcoin, it's pretty much the same. Here you can see that we've had the peak in August 2020. This is the all-time high in USDT. But if you are looking at the Bitcoin price from this level until there, and you're going to look at what Chainlink has been doing, Chainlink against Bitcoin has been losing approximately 40% since this peak. So Bitcoin, in terms of price action, has been doing a 2.5x. Which is that you will be way better off, which is why cycles are so important, and which is why timing your investments is more critical than anything else. In that regard, we are making the same trend, higher lows, higher highs. What we want to see with Chainlink is that we flip a level here. If we get a retest, I think it's a trigger to actually enter. So we are looking at 28.50, and then we can continue the actual move. Now, there's another one, which is Injective. Pretty much surprising to me that we've had such a big breakout. I wasn't surprised that we started to break to the upside, but such a strong one is quite surprising. What do we see when we come to Injective? Cycle low, consolidation, retest taking place of the previous highs, which has been holding. Continued to rally, so it took out all these highs here. It barely touched that one. And then we started to have some retests again. So the obvious levels, which is this level, didn't hit. And that is a sign of strength, because people are eager to get into this position, which we have been seeing. But more or less what we have been seeing is higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, higher highs, right? We continue to do. Now the RSI is on a level of 93, which it has been here, which it has been here. We might still see some upside, all right? But the chances of having a correction are significant. In this case, we've had a correction of 40%. In this case, we had a correction of 35%. I'm not saying we will from this level, because if you see the RSI, we still had a few highs. If you see this area, first RSI, we still had a few more highs. But if you look at the higher time frame chart for Injective, we can spot ourselves into a key resistance zone here at 1470. So I would not be surprised if we continue to move to like 1560 in some weak candles, so it starts to become overexhausted, consolidate, and then we start to fall back beneath. Then from an investment perspective, I think $10 is the best area. Not sure what are we going to get it. If we are going to get it, it's great, but otherwise I'll be looking at anything around 1080 to 1150 for entry points for this one. Now, these are moving, but what can we expect from some other altcoins? Well, if you look at things like Optimism, I think it's just lagging behind heavily, all right? So what we see here is that we barely are making ourselves a new higher high. We have been cracking the low, so we are eager to make ourselves a higher low and start trending to the upside. And if we start trending to the upside, it seems very reasonable to retest the cycle highs, which is around $3.10. What are we looking at in the daily chart is that we are seeking for that higher low. We might have had it, and if we start to trend up, you can start buying those retest or standard corrections of 20 to 30%. The critical one is that we need to break this level of 143. But you can see that if you look at Injective, the upside is probably relatively capped, but it feels more confident for you to actually buy that asset because it has been trending so much. And because on social media you will see answers of people saying, hey, this one is going to go to like $50 or whatever. It might, but from a risk perspective, it's just not worth it. When you're looking at new assets that are probably going to follow suit, Arbitrum or Optimism are ones that have not been moving yet, but they will. And at that point, you want to get into those positions, because if they start to move, that is the trigger that people are starting to jump into those, and the hype will get towards these assets. So in this case, I think entering a position onto Optimism isn't bad. You should realize that we can still take out this low and retest around here to create ourselves that higher low, through which the DCA strategy is definitely something you should be looking at. I hope you have been enjoying this longer update. I'll be back on Tuesday with a Bitcoin update. Make sure to subscribe, check out the consultancies, check out the course, and that's about it. I'll see you again. Have a wonderful Sunday. Ciao.